Welcome to another episode of Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network, sponsored by Bet Online. That's Bri Maestas. Hi, Bri.
Hi.
I'm Patrick Chiotti. We are the hosts of this program. Bri, the Kansas City Chiefs got their butts whooped in the Super Bowl. How do you feel about it?
Initial thoughts? Never been
thoughts.
happier. Yeah, never been more excited to talk about someone's downfall. Since when, right?
Yeah.
Extremely enjoyable, and I know it's very petty of me to take enjoyment in someone's atrocious loss, but
Yeah.
it couldn't have happened to a better team.
Yeah, I was, I was having a good time watching it. It was nice to see Vic Fangio doing Vic Fangio things, but everything was going great until they showed the graphic of largest deficit in Super Bowl history outside of Super Bowl 48, which honestly in the minds of Broncos fans doesn't exist. That game never happened. So don't know what
Let's
you're
talk
talking about
about
there. We on this episode of Bleav in the Broncos, we're going to talk about what lessons the Broncos may have learned from watching this Super Bowl, because I think that there is still some things that this team could have learned from watching their division rival and two-time Super Bowl champion, the last two-time Super Bowl champion go at it with a true juggernaut in the form of Vic Fangio and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Broncos also hired a special teams coordinator / assistant head coach. So we will be talking about that. And we'll also be talking about Super Bowl odds for next season. Where do the Broncos land in the initial predictions? Where do they land in the odds? Is it time to put your bets in now? We're going to be talking about all of that because our wonderful sponsors of this show, Bet Online, put out their Super Bowl odds early, and we'll be looking at that. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025 and beyond. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one betting source. From every three-pointer to every hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online. The game starts here. And Bri, where we're going to start is with this Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, of course, losing 40-22 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Patrick Mahomes, probably the worst football game I've ever seen him play in his career. But, I mean, no fault of his own? Like, Vic Fangio had the game plan going in. He knew exactly what he was going to do to stop. And if you rush more than 5, Bri, or if you rush more than 4, really, you're going to give Patrick Mahomes an opportunity. What did you see in this game from the Chiefs that maybe the Broncos were looking at as a lesson learned?
Well, I think the Broncos have been watching this team closely, not only as a division rival, right? It's the monkey on the back of this team for a very long time. And the streak being broken doesn't mean a whole lot in a sense of trying to compete for number one in the West. I think the Broncos really have to take into circumstances of maybe Broncos country was hoping the Chiefs would win one more, making them just kind of indelible to having to sign additional free agents that are coming up and having the money and the resources in order to help Patrick Mahomes continue his prime. I was really shocked to hear individuals kind of paint this as Patrick Mahomes just needs more help now. Like that's the answer to this. And I think you can see a lot of it in how the Chiefs have maybe gotten fatigue in their own right through attending so many Super Bowls and postseason games. And although that sounds crazy, right? These are esteemed professionals who are playing the game of football at a very high level. I think there is some merit to we've been there before and we're maybe not as hungry. And in the or in the adverse, the Broncos are the opposite of that. They're up and coming. They're young. They haven't tasted that success at that level. And so I think there is a nice juxtaposition there between the two teams. But Patrick Mahomes was not infallible. He hasn't been infallible his entire career. What he has had is the combination of Andy Reid, who is by far in the tiers of the annals of history of being just a tremendous head coach, but also the system that he's placed in. And that's not me calling Patrick Mahomes a system quarterback. It's saying what's around him and his athleticism and his skill. And the youngness that he provided in the immediacy of his career was paying off dividends. And now you're seeing that age out just through the natural progression of the NFL in Kansas City as a whole. They're now leaning on this narrative, and the national narrative as well. I even heard Tom Brady say this, and I kind of scoffed at the moment of, well, now they have to rebuild around him, right? The rebuilding time starts now. And I'm like, there's no rebuilding. There's resurfacing.
You're Super Bowl.
You're legitimately at the peak of your professionalism here. And I think Tom was like misspeaking in the moment, so I'm not going to hold it against him. But the idea here is, their O-line needs a little resurfacing. Travis Kelce needs to be out there.
Whoa. Just kick him right out.
No, yeet. I think is the word that we want to use here, because the level of I heard a justification for why he didn't move on that play where the flag was thrown, right? And he's like, he saw the flag. Why was he going to? The play is not dead until there's a whistle. And I think if you're at the point in your career at 35 years old, which I can't believe we have to parentheses that as elderly in the league, because then it hurts my heart. But, right. Well, the idea here is that if you're not putting the same amount of drive and hunger into your performance, then I think you've topped out at a momentum in which you're not fighting for like the Chiefs against the world mantra. You're not trying to prove yourself as a young talent. You're not trying to compete against the individuals who try to put you on the same platform of a Rob Gronkowski, which you're not, Travis Kelce. You're a good tight end. You've always been a good tight end, but you'll never be to that level. And that's the same conversation I'm glad has finally ended. And we can put a nice little bookend there and consider that a false narrative of comparing Patrick Mahomes to a Tom Brady. Tom Brady could have come down from the broadcast booth and be Patrick Mahomes in his current prime. And it's happened. It happened recently. So I don't know why there was this conversation of it being this indelible truth of Patrick Mahomes is now going to be the GOAT of all GOATs. And it's just, I'm so happy that it worked the way out that it has. And I'm never going to negate the fact that Kansas City Chiefs have been an absolute powerhouse. Now, what the Broncos can take from that is you cannot get comfortable. And I don't think Sean Payton is the type to be content with achieving that and continuing to grow upon that. I don't think he's afraid of getting rid of the old in order to continue to evolve and like transcend into this new team. So that was a very roundabout way of saying the Broncos can learn a lot, but they're already handling themselves in a different capacity. Now, you win a Super Bowl, things change, mindsets change, etc. So when the Broncos reach that, which the time has started, we've already talked about the clock being that timer is pressed, the button is ready. And so what do they do to change that conversation? And so again, kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't like the way that sounds either, but I'm pleased. Yeah, we'll give it to them, right?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest lessons I think that the Broncos can take away from this is look at how Philadelphia constructed this team. Look at the biggest areas, where they saw so much success, and look at how their recruiting department and their player development department has been. I mean, you get two guys like Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the same draft class, which for the people who were watching those guys in college and throughout that draft process, they were like, these guys are 2 first-round picks. Like, they are bona fide athletes. Like, they can ball. They can absolutely play. They have done a fantastic job of just getting guys who can play ball, getting big athletic dudes on the defensive front that can push That you don't need to send a bunch of exotic blitzes. And that's where Vic Fangio's defensive scheme, this was a match made in heaven for the Philadelphia Eagles organization and Vic Fangio being, the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins at the time. This was a match made in heaven because they had all the pieces. They just didn't have the right coach or the right scheme, right? So I think for Sean Payton looking at this, he can say, okay, like, do we have the right scheme or do we not have the right guys? Like, what are we missing here? What is the, are we too aggressive in what we're doing defensively? Because we saw down the stretch where, Vance's defense early in the season was great. It's fantastic. We're sending all these pressures. We got the highest blitz rate in the league. Hey, we've got the most sacks in the league. But then down the stretch, you're giving up 400, 500 yards in a game. You're giving up 30 points a game. You're allowing the run game to just go crazy. So where does the defensive scheme come into play, right? So I think
that's the bend break mentality, Pat,
yeah.
right? Like that's where you take the risk. And if you live by the sword, you're dying by the sword. But I don't want to also discount that Sean Payton had that available to him in a Christian Parker too, who just inevitably earned his keep too as a Super Bowl champion.
And they could have had Vic. Vic even said he was thinking about coming back, but the time wasn't right. Right? The time wasn't right. It was too soon after everything happened. So I don't blame him for that. But I think the big lesson is take your player development very seriously. Take your scouting and your recruiting process to a whole different level. Because if you try to continue to fit, these individual players into roles where maybe that's not where they succeed, right? You've got to be able to find what works with these players, and Philadelphia found that in a guy like Nakobe Dean, right? They figured out how to use that dude. Who's that other edge rusher? Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith was super light. Nobody thought that he could be, edge rusher. I even thought, he's a little too small for my liking, but he's super explosive, right? And they figured it out. So I think that it's going to come down to, seeing how Philadelphia built this team, seeing how their scheme was perfectly reflected off of the personnel that they had. And you got to make it work, right? It's got to work to an extent. And I thought it was so funny too. A couple years ago, when Tom Brady was playing in that Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, everybody was like, man, how did the Bucs figure out Patrick Mahomes so well? Well, Bri, if you remember that season, Vic Fangio was the head coach of the Denver Broncos. The 2 games that Patrick Mahomes played the Denver Broncos, I think he only threw 1 or 2 touchdowns in those 2 games. The least amount of touchdown passes he had in that entire season. And the defensive coaches for the Bucs used Vic Fangio's game plan in those games against him. They had the personnel to make that work. They had big dudes in the middle that could push the pocket. They had great edge rushers who can contain really well. They made life hell for Patrick Mahomes. Vic Fangio laid out the blueprint, and now every team just needs to take that and just say, okay, we know how to beat them. Just play quarters the whole game. Send 4. That's all you need to do. So
simple, beautiful, we just need a Jalen Carter and Vic Fangio. I apologize. I didn't realize your game.
Yeah. That old Italian bastard knows what he's doing, right? Bri, the Super Bowl is over, but it's never too early to look at next year's Super Bowl. And Bet Online, our beautiful sponsors of this show, did recently put out their Super Bowl LX champion odds. And no surprise, the team at the top is the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's bring it out. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, are at the top of that list. But as we can see, hang on, I'm pulling it up. All right, there we go.
Fancy.
Yeah, fancy. The Baltimore Ravens are third. The Buffalo Bills are fourth. The Lions and Niners are there at 5 and 6. The Commanders and Bengals at 7 and 8. The Denver Broncos at 11 with plus 2,800 odds to be Super Bowl LX champion. How do you feel about where the Broncos are at in these odds?
Bet online, you beautiful, beautiful teases.
Right.
I feel like that is a prime spot for them to be in. But I think after the onslaught of the last couple of years, I think it's almost you have to take yourself out of the moment and the circumstance, because it feels surreal that the Broncos could make that type of jump for their performance. I think that, but that's how quickly the NFL moves, and that's how quickly seasons can change, and the parity of the seasons. And I'm pulling it up because my old eyes can't see the small text here, but they're in the same vein as the Rams. They're not far off from the Houston Texans.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting conversation to start having, where I would sprinkle some money on that for that type of vig. Like you're getting a whole ton of juice there. Maybe not as much as you would if you took them as some sort of dark horse candidate. But I can't help but laugh at some of the teams in the latter half of the bracket there. But it tracks. So when you start looking how teams performed this season and really their limited ability to improve in just one off season, it's pretty telling that the Broncos have now entered a stable environment in which to really bolster your point of building up and finding that talent and developing that talent, that they really actually have a great shot to be competitive and take it to that next level, which may be winning a playoff game. And you don't love to look at things in such an incremental gain, especially when NFL careers are so short. But I'm excited by the prospect that they could be in the top half of the league for Super Bowl odds. Like that alone is an off-season win, right? That's the first off-season win. And depending on when that news broke via the other news we're going to talk about, I'm fairly excited about that. Pat, my question to you is, who are they competing against the most? Is it themselves, or is it the rest of the AFC West? Is it the AFC in general? Because we know that hasn't been as necessarily competitive as we thought it would be.
Yeah, I think this offseason is going to be really telling about that, right? Seeing the initial odds where we're just outside the cusp of, the top 10 in that regard. That's very telling about how Vegas feels about this Denver Broncos team. Like the fact that, we always bring it up, but the fact that they predicted, that win total for last season and they blew it out of the water, ended up making the playoffs, kind of showed them like, oh, maybe we shouldn't doubt this team too much now. We're not going to say they're top 10 Super Bowl favorite, but maybe just outside, right? Because if we doubt them too much, well, we know that they're going to keep an eye on that. So this offseason, I think it's going to be massive to find out like where this team is really going to be at come training camp. The only team, Bri, and I will always use this saying, the only team that can beat the Broncos is the Broncos. It's the only team that can, realistically, right? Because no other team, in the game of football, it all comes down to your assignment, your job. If you do it and all the 10 other guys that are on the field do it, everything should go as planned, right? Everything should go as practiced. So really the only team that they're going to be competing with is themselves. Of course, you're going to have to go out and beat every team that's on the schedule, but at the end of the day, you are competing against yourself. So I think that this offseason is going to be massive. And I can't wait to see how these odds kind of jump when free agency happens or after the draft happens. What if they add somebody, like, throwing this out there, not going to say that it's going to happen, but let's say the Broncos do go out and sign someone like T. Higgins? How does that affect those odds, right? Let's say the Broncos go into this NFL draft and they get a guy like a Walter Nolan, or they get a guy like a Tyler Warren. How does that affect the odds? What if they get a good running back in this draft? How does that affect the odds, right? So I think this offseason is going to be massive. But at the end of the day, they're always going to be competing against themselves. I think Sean Payton understands that. He knows that. He's getting this team ready. His Super Bowl comments were really funny as well. Him saying he kind of hopes that the Chiefs win so that it puts them into this financial turmoil that you were kind of talking about. So I think that those odds could get a little bit better as this offseason goes on. But the fact that they start out at 11th, pretty hopeful. I might throw some cash on it. What about you?
Yeah, you got to sprinkle it on there. Bet online. I'll be visiting soon.
Yeah. And let us know what your bets are. Also, I want to point out one other team that I thought was kind of hilarious that maybe people should throw some money on. The Jacksonville Jaguars plus 8,000. Are you kidding me? Liam Cohen going over there with Trevor Lawrence. That's a steal.
They know something we don't know.
That's a steal.
I'm just saying.
Just throw $10 on it. What's the worst that could happen, right? Bri, you mentioned big news. There is big news out of Broncos country. The special teams is going to be Rizzing teams up. I can't believe I said that. Darren Rizzi officially hired as the team special teams coordinator and assistant head coach. That is an interesting title. Bri, how do you feel about this hire? And what kind of impact do you think that this makes on the Broncos team specifically for this upcoming season?
I love that the audio listeners couldn't see my face break.
Which
was, and Pat, I'm going to apologize to you right now.
Do you think I liked saying that? Do you think
the best part of it lined up perfectly with it, but it literally had nothing to do with what you were talking about. As I read the ticker, the Broncos plan.
You like that?
Yes, to improve the fan experience would be allowing one fan per game to play in the game. And I legitimately lost my mind. And so I'm breaking the fourth wall. I'm giving away one of our secrets, but that is the funniest shit. I was like, where's this going?
Yeah, I was like, this could be like, it starts out very realistic and then goes to asinine.
Okay,
just one kickoff. Just let them do one kickoff a game.
They don't even have to line up in form of danger because screw Mini Miles, the T runner overplayed. I want to see a fan suited up.
Yep.
In a fitting jersey, and then they just jog off and they go sit down and they just get to experience that once. Like I started an NFL game. That would be friggin' fantastic.
That'd be hilarious.
Whew. Okay, Darren Rizzi, the Rizzler. That's what's going to happen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the Denver Saints have created this in their own existence, and that joke obviously pointing to the fact that there's a smattering, and I might even say two handfuls worth of players and coaches that all have ties to Sean Payton in New Orleans. There's nothing wrong with that. At first I was very like, wait a second, you don't have to pluck all your old guys and bring them with you. That's not a thing. What are we doing here? Because in my initial uptake, it felt a lot like the old boys club, the good old guys. Right. Like, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to bring you over here, which can get really messy really quickly in any forum that you allow it to happen. But we've seen the impact that little Jordan Humphrey has had, and the Will Lutz acquisition, and the two coaches who are no longer with us, Banjo and Declan. And so the idea here is that it's not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm going to go into this with the intentions are good, and where did the Saints find all of their success? In the years in which Darren Rizzi was added to the team as a special teams coach, then he got the nod with that assistant head coach denotation on his resume. I don't think it's a bad idea. And there's been a question since Sean Payton started, and kind of the questions around maybe some of the game management that's not even tied to situational calls. It's from a Sean Payton has so much on his plate as a head coach, and a play caller is a difficult situation to be in. He was out of the league for a little bit. That turnaround time, like, could he benefit from having someone he's worked closely with for a long time, who he trusts, who has the same sort of, I can press these buttons and these men of this roster are going to listen to me, with the same intentions that Sean Payton wants. Like, Sean Payton wants his ship steered exactly how he wants it steered. And maybe he's not at the helm, but he is watching that happen. And so this addition is an absolute Sean Payton move. And if we're all in the boat of in Sean Payton we trust, this is the correct move. And it's the worst kept secret, right? In the last couple of weeks, we knew that opportunity was going to be there. He did his rounds as a head coach candidate, and now he's making that lateral move over to the Denver Broncos. So I think it's a fantastic move for what the present culture and identity of this Denver Broncos team is. And we've seen the success that Rizzi has had. And Pat,
Yeah.
I know you are the expert in the special teams realm, so I'm always going to err on how you see this playing out. But to me, it's the no nonsense. It is the what Sean Payton needs in order to run Sean Payton's team. The way he sees it happening, this was a no-brainer. And Mike Westhoff was an absolute genius when it came to the special teams and what happened there, and his entire tree of his staff. But when you uproot all of that, what a better name to bring in than Darren Rizzi? I know the Saints organization and fandom is sad to see him go, so that also bodes well. But I would try to run far away from Derek Carr too, so I don't blame him.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this hire, and I'm excited mostly because we have seen the special teams unit grow since the Nathaniel Hackett season, where it was not very good at all, to the last couple of seasons where things have gotten better. That first season after Hackett, things got better. Things improved. Marvin Mims becomes an all-pro. He's an all-pro returner. And then this last season continued to improve. We saw things get a little bit better. Marvin Mims, again, all-pro returner. So, the question is like, well, damn, this is one of the better special teams units in the league, all things considered, this past season. How could they possibly get any better? Well, I think that this team just needs somebody who can continue that type of environment, who can continue teaching things the way that Sean Payton wants them to be taught. You can't just bring in any Joe Schmo, as a special teams coordinator and expect them to carry that same standard. And the fact that Rizzi is getting that assistant head coach role is interesting, because that means that, like you said, he's going to have some input on game management. He's going to have some input on, practices and how they're running things. So I think that this is a great thing. He's got, total head coach experience now as the interim head coach. He was also under Dennis Allen for a couple of years. So that the whole Sean Payton system is living, breathing through this hire. I think that this is an excellent hire for the Denver Broncos. I think that this is, it's going to be great for the growth of the special teams. He's a very smart individual. I asked Chris Harris Jr. really quick, because he played for Rizzi in New Orleans. Yeah. And he loved the hire. And so, I asked him, like, how is he going to make this unit better now that they're already they've already become one of the best special teams units in the league? How does this improve? Right. And his response was, he's just a smart guy. Like, he knows, he understands situations really well. He understands how to read other teams and like what their tendencies are, as far as like fake punts go, or like punt coverage or anything like that. So if Chris is excited about it, I'm really excited about it. I'm going to dive back through some of the Saints special teams film over the next couple months and figure some stuff out, because I'm also going to have to be studying up on my special teams here for the upcoming high school football season. So yeah. So I'm really excited. Mike Westhoff, you mentioned him, and in his role, in his capacity, I think it was perfect for what the Broncos and Sean Payton needed. He unfortunately had to step away, but I think that this will bring a youthful infusion, right? Rizzi is a lot younger. Let's just start calling him the Rizzler. I think that's yeah. The Rizzler will bring in that juice. He's got energy, and he's not a special teams guy who's going to be up in the box either. I love that. As a special teams guy, stop putting your special teams coordinators up in the box. Don't ever.
You don't want to lose the viral moments that you're going to get with an impassioned soul like a Darren Rizzi. Like, you want to see him on the sideline being absolutely mental. What I think I like the most about that, though, Pat, is there's an emphasis of loud coaches, big faces, mean grimaces are the old and outplayed way of the NFL. No siree, football is about that passion. So I kind of like it just for the fact that we're never really going to know what's going on in his head, but it's not going to be the Vic Fangio deadpan, I'm mad at the world and I just am displeased with everybody.
No, Vic belongs in the box. Vic belongs up in the box. That's where.
And nobody talks to him. Nobody looks at Vic.
Don't even think about looking his way. But like, special teams coordinators should be down on the field. I think that's where they get the most bang for their buck, and those viral moments are going to be a lot of fun. And Sean Payton is just building this great, albeit it's a sinking ship apparently. So we can't take that into account. But I think that this is going to be a lot of fun. Special teams is going to be fun again. It was this last season. This team was awesome at covering punts. This team was really good with their kickoff coverage. And Will Lutz had a career year. Like this was awesome for Will Lutz. So I'm excited to see what Rizzi can do. Really excited about this hire. So
the last bit is just bringing over Taysom Hill and an Alvin Kamara, and we'll just
I can't do that now.
Oh yeah,
they signed him to like a 3-year extension. Shot that right in the foot.
We got Walmart money. Pat, you got to say it though. Make special teams great again, and that's what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah. Mastka. Ugh. Yeah, Mastka. I don't like that. Ugh, gross.
I don't like any of it.
I don't like it one bit. That's gonna do it for us today, Bri. What a show. We're gonna continue with our off-season shows. We've got the NFL Combine coming up here really soon. We're gonna have a whole off-season schedule for y'all. Make sure that you stay tuned in, subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, so you can watch the shows over there. Next week, we're going to be doing a little fun game with the position groups and the Denver Broncos. Bri is going to dive into her feelings, which everybody wants to see that, right? Bri, any last words for Broncos country?
Take care of yourself and I don't know, smile today.
Yeah.
What kind of life advice do you want? Go Broncos.
Yeah, go Broncos. We will see y'all next week. For Bri Maestas, Patrick Chiotti, and Bet Online, we will see y'all next week. Go Broncos.